Today's Locked On Texan podcast, Lovey Smith commented on changing things after 3 games. Today's also a good day to give some flowers and compliments to those that is well deserving of it. And we also talk about why hasn't Tyler Johnson taken the field. All of that on today's Locked On Texan podcast.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Texans is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I'm John Hickman. That's Cody Davis, here to discuss on this beautiful Tuesday the Houston Texans. Now, Cody, I think we need to go ahead and jump in, and just how we started Monday's recap show, starting with Lovey Smith, I think we also need to start today's show with the Lovey Smith. Now, this is a comment before I get into it. Lovey Smith was asked about changing some things with the team so far as they go 0-2-1. Lovey Smith commented and said, "First time something doesn't go right, you change everything you do?" The answer is no, 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 and no. We're 3 games into a 17-game regular season. Cody, in my humble opinion, you absolutely make changes when trying to improve your team. Improving is changing. I think that's kind of plain and simple. When you want to get better, you make changes in order to do so. Now, through the course of the first 3 weeks, this team hasn't done consistently or aggressively enough to put a win in a win column. Some areas of concern that needs change. Go ahead and list them out. The Texans are 10 of 40 on third down this year, only converting 25% of the time. The Texans were 0 of 4 on 3rd and 1 on Sunday. That's borderline inexcusable. I think some game plan changes needs to also come into effect. Brandon Cooks, 2-time 1,000-yard receiver for the Houston Texans, has made some plays, has been brought up in the who is the most underrated player in the NFL conversation. However, right now, through 3 weeks of the NFL season, young NFL season, Brandon Cooks has only caught 13 of his 29 targets this year. Now, Nico Collins, 8 of 16, with a good number of those targets not being catchable. Sunday's game, at one point during the game, Davis Mills, when targeting everybody else, not Brandon Cooks, was 14 of 19, 178 yards, 1 touchdown. When targeting Brandon Cooks, 1 of 6 for 17 yards. I think a game plan change also needs to be brought up in the film room, which you are expecting a coach like Lovey Smith, even though he is a defensive coach, he will have the final say-so. These are some of the areas of change that can be mentioned. And then lastly, Lovey Smith addressed the linebacker play by saying, "I don't think it's been good." Well, my question is, will Lovey Smith play more of a coaching role for the linebackers to tweak and make changes? Wallo's first game was on Sunday. He should see more time. He should see more than 14 snaps moving forward. Of course, he's bouncing back from injury. They're getting him into some game shape. So Sunday was his first game back, as mentioned. Also, Houston leads the league in missed tackles. So that problem needs to change. So addressing Lovey Smith's comments of saying through 3 weeks, 3 games, do you change everything? Absolutely. You can't look at change as an enemy unless you're an enemy of progress. And if this team is an enemy of progress, then we have to have a real conversation of whether or not they won't win the game this year. We have to have a real conversation of, when will Pep Hamilton be out the door? Is this another one-and-done situation for your head coach and an offensive coordinator combo in terms of the King Casario looking down and figuring out what he wants to do? That needs to be changed. And I also want to mention that Rex Burkhead being tied with the most targets, the second most targets on this team, is not a good thing. However, I don't blame him for the targets he received on Sunday in the passing game. Some of those were just good decisions, the better decisions to take by Davis Mills. So I'm not necessarily blaming Rex Burkhead for his production as well.
Here's my issue about Coach Lovie Smith talking about the first time something doesn't go right, do you change it? That would have been the best answer if this was week 1 heading into week 2 of the regular season. However, John, listeners and viewers, this is week 3 of the regular season heading into week 4. Not only that, you had an opportunity to win not 1, not 2, but 3 games. And every
All in
single
the fourth
time,
quarter.
all in the fourth quarter, every single time we came on this show talking about the same issues over and over and over again. And John, the worst part about all this is, like I said on yesterday, this is a Houston Texans team that's going to be taking on a very hungry Los Angeles Chargers team, which means there's a great possibility by the end of next week, we'll be looking at a situation where the Houston Texans will be 0-3-1. With that being said, John, listeners and viewers, Lovie Smith has to change something. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say there should be a quarterback change, because I'm pretty sure in his mind that is the number one thing that he was thinking about, because this is the NFL. Every time a team isn't playing well, that is the first thing people would like to ask, will there, if they be a quarterback change? And look, Davis Mills, outside of what, the second going into third quarter against the Chicago Bears, and of course that first half against the Indianapolis Colts, Davis Mills has not looked that great. We understand that. We get it. And as of right now, once again, Houston Texans are sitting here with not 1, not 2, but 3 missed opportunities to record their first win of the 2022 campaign. We could look and say that Davis Mills is a big part of that. However, with all that being said, John, listeners and viewers, and I know this is a conversation that we're going to get into later on in the show, but there are several other things that Coach Lovie Smith, Pep Hamilton, Nick Caserio can do to help this team move forward. I.e., you mentioned it a lot, the wide receiving core. There is a pretty solid wide receiver who has recorded his third healthy scratch in a row in Tyler Johnson. If your number one concern is Davis Mills doesn't have enough weapons, Davis Mills is targeting Brandon Cooks too much, or whatever the case might be, why not change up your wide receiving core and get Tyler Johnson out there? When you talk about change, we saw on Sunday's game where the game got a little shaky for the Houston Texans, more so Dameon Pierce fumbling the ball. Why did you take him out for the final couple of snaps that basically resulted in you losing this game? I didn't like that statement from Lovie Smith. I've been supportive of a lot of things that he has said ever since he's been hired, i.e. the split decision of him settling for the tie. I 100% supported Lovie Smith. But once again, I do not like the fact of you saying that because it don't work out the first time, you know, whether or not to change it or not. Like I mentioned, that would have been the best statement to say come week 1 of the regular season. But this is the third time we're seeing this. I don't like it. I don't understand it. There should be several changes on this roster beyond the quarterback position, by the way. I don't want to call Davis Mills' job into question, but at the same time, John, listeners and viewers, keep this in mind. When Lovie Smith got hired, Pep Hamilton as the offensive coordinator, Nick Caserio having a great draft, we knew that we wasn't looking at a championship team. We knew that we wasn't looking at a playoff team. However, we all had a belief that we was going to be looking at a more promising and a better team than the product that this organization has put out on the field over the last 2 seasons. And as of right now, it seems like this might be the worst product over the last 2 seasons. And if that's the case, then you definitely got to make some type of change heading into week 4 against the Los Angeles Chargers.
By the way, the Los Angeles Chargers will be taking on their second AFC South opponent 2 weeks in a row. The Jaguars were able to get it done on Sunday. The Chargers will be without a major player blocking for Justin Herbert. Now, 3 weeks in a row so far, the Houston Texans have went up against teams that was without, if not their best, they're around their best player. Darius Leonard, Shaquille Leonard, week 1. You look at the Broncos game. No Simmons. Judy goes down early. and I believe they're without someone else that just I can't think of right off the top of my head. You look at the Bears game. Montgomery goes down in the first quarter. They are coming in without players, and you know, this is just not a good offense. And they were allowed 23 points when, on average, that's not what they're putting up. And so, Houston is a team that has not been able to capitalize on their opportunities that teams have been giving them. I think the biggest one is the kicker missing the field goal to win the game before going to overtime, right? That may be the biggest one. I think 3rd and 1 against the Bears, maybe the second one when you're right there by the goal line and you're just not able to capitalize on momentum that at that point was swinging into your favor. This has been a team like mental errors and mistakes because I do think not taking care of and capitalizing on those opportunities or mental errors and mistakes that's hurt this team. And for a Lovie Smith coach team, I didn't think we were going to be having these conversations. Maybe David Culley, even Bill O'Brien, but not with a Lovie Smith coach team. And that is an issue, and that is something that needs to change. We do have to talk about some of the good things on today's show. I can't wait to do so because I do think with 0-2-1 as a record right now, Houston has done some good things so far, and we'll talk about that. Listen, guys, one of my latest, like, kind of a guilty pleasure now has been Prize Picks. I've already told you guys how it worked. You can pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. That's the best part about it. Prize Picks also offers projections on any sport you watch, and it's fall time. So we have a combination of college football, NFL, basketball, college basketball. Like there's baseball. There's everything going on right now, and Prize Picks allow you to choose from the pick of the litter, the cream of the crop. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to theprizepicks.com to sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with a promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match for up to $100. Welcome back, Locked On listeners, to this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, and every day includes Tuesdays. That's why we do it. Cody, James Cook on YouTube. Now we normally save YouTube comments for the weekend show, but James Cook on YouTube said, "I can see by this podcast why y'all don't have more listeners." I said, "Why is that?" James Cook commented back and said, "Like, bring up some positive things, like how the Texans held Justin Fields to a 19.6 total QBR rating. There are some positive things happening. However, you never bring it up." And this is on yesterday's podcast when we mentioned some of the good things that happened. Like, I gave Davis Mills some kudos, but I'll restate them, and we definitely showed Petrie some love. But James Cook
and Stingley.
James
and by the way, I do want to mention these are the best our numbers have looked since we started this podcast, by the way. But honestly, guys, whether you love or hate the podcast, we really do appreciate all the support, all the feedback. We just like to have fun with you guys.
Absolutely. And this show is dedicated to my brother Drew. I want you to take a moment of time and pray for Drew. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just a Texan fan right now, and he's going through it. But I do want to mention that there has been some good things. Number one, I think when the season started, well before the season started, well before the draft, the identity that was focused to be created for this team was to be a run-first team, to be a run team. And I think that the attempt to be better throughout the last couple of weeks since week 1 for the Houston Texans has been admirable. I think that they have recognized that at this current stage of the season, well, Dameon Pierce may just be their best offensive player. Now, for Houston, Week 1, they rushed for 77 yards against the Colts. Week 2 against the Broncos, Houston rushed for 80 yards, and then against the Bears, Houston rushed for 92 yards. Those numbers may not be a significant increase. However, it is an increase, and the biggest increase is snap counts for Dameon Pierce. So I give them kudos, and that's a change, by the way. That is an in-season change where you have to understand that Rex Burkhead and our lack of providing adequate depth at the running back position because we chose loyalty over talent. Well, we got to ride with Dameon Pierce, so I think that's a good thing. Also, the Texans' defense pressured opposing quarterbacks on 47% of pass attempts in week 3. Of course, that's going up against Justin Field. That was the best in the NFL. The league average is 16%. 27.7% Houston Texans allowed that passer rating in week 3, only gave up a 27.7 passer rating, and that was, of course, to Justin Fields. Also, the Texans defense has allowed a completion percentage of just 36% in the red zone this season. That is third best in the NFL. The league average has been 54%. Also from Davis Mills, going directly back to Sunday's game. On 3rd and 7, when he had a good, clean pocket, I was very impressed by the blocking on Sunday, and I'll highlight somebody else. But he allowed that play to form, found Chris Moore for 50 yards. Also, another good, the pass to Philip Dorsett. Kind of mirrored the pass that he threw to Philip Dorsett in the preseason. That was also a dot, I thought, by Davis Mills, one of his more impressive throws so far this year. Scott Quisenberry has looked very much like an upgrade over Justin Britt. That is a positive. I thought Quisenberry had a very good game on Sunday against the Denver Broncos, against the Chicago Bears. And, of course, Jalen Petrie, who is in running with being the best player on this team right now. He had himself a field day against the Bears. And what I like about the rookie Petrie is in his post game, whenever he was able to talk with the media, he gave some credit to Christian Kirksey about kind of forcing Justin Fields to float the pass so he can complete it over his head, and that allowed Petrie enough time to come cut it off and get that second interception. Those are some of the things not only do you like to see out of your rookie player, but those are some great things that you would like to hear out of your player. And I wonder how long before we have a conversation of, is Jalen Petrie somewhat the new version of J.J. Watt in terms of being the face of the franchise? I think that's a very good conversation to have within maybe by the end of the year. He is from the city of Houston. Also, Kenyon Green, the cleanup block on the play that resulted in a Roquan Smith interception that should have went to Nico Collins right behind him. A cleanup block by Kenyon Green, another rookie, was phenomenal. Almost had a dead body on the field, man. So shout out to the rookies. I think those are some of the good things that we're seeing. And Davis Mills did have 2 of his best drives so far in his second year, sophomore year, against the Chicago Bears as well.
Yeah, and look, when we talk about positives, I want to look beyond the game on Sunday, and I just want to look at the first 3 games as a whole. And John, outside of Davis Mills and Brevin Jordan, the sophomore class and even the rookie class, the rookies that's been out there on the field consistently, I've liked what I've seen, because I know one thing. Going into this upcoming season, I said I wanted to continue to see the promise, the development from the rookie class and the sophomore class, and that's what I've been able to see. First and foremost, you take a look at a guy like Nico Collins. This has been arguably their best offensive player, a guy that, as of right now, has caught 8 catches for 125 yards, and I know that is going to continue to progress as the season continues. John, I know right now some people might be a little bit down on Dameon Pierce because they thought that he was going to come out the gates and be Aaron Foster 2.0. However, when you take a look at what he did on Sunday, you're talking about a guy that recorded 80 yards on 20 carries. I like the fact that he is already able to help the Houston Texans move the chain because, look, what we're seeing right now is Dameon Pierce go through his learning process. So if he is already if he's already at the point where he is going through his learning process and he's able to get 80 yards on 20 carries, what you think he's going to be able to do come midway through the season or towards the end of his rookie campaign? Oh,
And,
by the
and, and,
way, oh, go ahead.
and I was about to say, by the way, with him getting better, it's not just necessarily on the ground. Some of his pass blocking assignments has gotten better with Damian Pierce, and it
Yes.
showed on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. He was able to chip, I forgot who it was, a hard chip block, which gave Davis Mills some more time to try to make a play. And so Pierce, again, he's learning week by week, but he is right now the more explosive player on this offense, and he's doing it with a mix of runs. Saw a lot of bigger runs on Sunday, saw some runs that was stopped behind the line, saw some average 3 to 4 runs, but he's mixing it up, and that's why I think so far he has been a huge positive, especially throughout the last 2 weeks.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, John, because it brought me back to week one of the regular season. Everybody was disappointed. Even us here on this podcast, we was all disappointed talking about why in the hell did Rex Burkhead get more snaps than Damian Pierce. After the game, Lovie Smith said there are some things that Damian Pierce needs to improve on, and he mentioned his pass protection. And one thing that stood out to me later on in the week, we had an opportunity to talk to Damian Pierce, and Damian Pierce said there's times throughout practice where Danny Barrett will have him go and get a couple reps in with the offensive line to work on his pass protection. And that is what we have been seeing over these last two games, especially the game on Sunday. With that being said, of course, when you take a look at on the defensive side of the ball, John, you just talked about how good the Houston Texans have been in their red zone defense. And there's two guys that I want to shout out. Derek Stingley Jr. and, of course, Jalen Petrie. Those three guys recorded a combined, I believe, 3 pass deflections in the end zone, 2 coming from Derek Stingley, 1 coming from Jalen Petrie, and that is just showing you once again that this secondary is not going to be bad like we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years. And Jalen Petrie, man, just take a listen to these numbers. In his first 3 games, 118 cover snaps, 3 receptions for a total of 35 yards, 2 interceptions, and 1 sack. John, I'm not going to go as far as to say by the end of next year, well, by the end of this year, towards the beginning of next year, we'll be looking at him as the new JJ Watt, because that is some big shoes to fill, especially being a face of this franchise. I don't think that the Texans.
There is no face.
Well, there's no face. Let's just say I would rather see faces of the franchise. I would rather see multiple guys be the face of the franchise. When I take a look at what Jalen Petrie has been doing, when I take a look at what Derek Stingley has been doing, once again, just like I said about Damian Pierce, these guys are going through their learning process right now. And if all 3 of these guys, especially Petrie, if all the 3 guys are making that type of impact in their first 3 games of the regular season, that lets you know that regardless of us sitting here talking about the 0-2-1 record or whatever the case might be, the future for this organization is extremely bright.
And there are your positives for the week. Sometimes the fans speak, and sometimes we kind of, or listeners rather, and sometimes we kind of dismiss them, not purposely, but we got to do what we have to do. However, it's sometimes we got to listen to y'all and let you know, like, it's not all bad. The record shows all bad because it's not a dub. But there has been some good things for Houston. It's happening in places Houston has failed at when their last great left. Only great running back, Aaron Foster. They failed to kind of replace that. Jonathan Joseph, the great cornerback that Houston brought in free agency. They failed to bring in another great cornerback, right? At times, they failed to have a playable cornerback on the field. The days of VH3 when Hargraves was out there. Safety has been an issue. So all of these, improvements and sunny skies that we're seeing are just shining in areas that necessarily hasn't had the sun in a while. Like, it's good to see it. And so you're right. We do have to kind of speak more positive, and some positive things did come. One thing that I want to see more positive of, I'm going to be an advocate of this until I'm wrong, and that is targeting and, of course, catchable passes to Nico Collins. He is averaging nearly 16 yards per catch right now. He is a big body receiver. On the play, Eddie Jackson caught the interception. If you go back and watch that play, Eddie Jackson baited his way towards Nico Collins, and I think that distracted Davis Mills. I also think he was going to force that pass to Brandon Cooks, regardless of how it was going to happen. But if you look, Eddie Jackson baits to the left and then breaks as soon as the play starts. You have Nico Collins, who's 6'4", in a one-on-one opportunity. The last time you guys hooked up in the red zone, it worked. He came down with it on a basketball rebound type of play. Those are some of those opportunities that, again, the Texans cannot afford to miss out on. And, of course, that opportunity led to an interception. Thanks for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to start this segment before we get out of here by saying something controversial. Why? Because it's Tuesday. Why not?
Don't do it.
Popeyes ain't good no more.
Boy,
man.
you out your mind, boy. I almost said something.
Hey,
said something, man.
It's two staples in the South that between Texas and Louisiana, we'd say, man, what we love down here. And that's been Popeyes and Whataburger. And both of them has been terrible in the last.
There go our subscribers. You can't disrespect both, man. Come on.
Cody, we haven't seen Tyler Johnson play football for the Houston Texans. What's going on with that? I mean, on Sunday, the Texans only dressed 4 wide receivers. They've done this a couple of times throughout the year so far. Chris Conley didn't play. They elevated Philip Dorsett. We saw Dorsett, Chris Moore, Nico Collins, Brandon Cooks. No Tyler Johnson for the third straight week. What's going on with that situation?
Yeah, and that was actually something I was able to explore last week, and I wrote about it on Texans Daily. I had an opportunity to speak to both Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton, and both coaches said that Tyler Johnson is still going through the learning process, still trying to get accustomed to the Houston Texans offensive playbook. Not only that, I also had an opportunity to pull Tyler Johnson to the side, had a quick conversation about him, and he also talked about how important it was for him to learn the playbook, because that is something that he really didn't do during his short stint with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He said, however, being around a lot of great players, including Tom Brady, the GOAT, that's when he truly realized how important it is to get accustomed to the playbook. I understand it. I get it. And I 100% agree with everybody involved that I had an opportunity to talk to. However, John, listeners and viewers, when we sit here and talk about the lack of weapons that Davis Mills have with his wide receiving core, I look at a guy in Tyler Johnson and I sit there and think to myself, I kind of feel like they're not only doing Davis Mills but the Houston Texans a disservice, but they're also doing Tyler Johnson a disservice as well, because I understand it. There is a level where all coaches and coaching staff would like to have their players engraved in their playbook. I get it. But at the same time, when you are struggling to move the change, when you are struggling to score in the end zone, why not, i.e., dress more than 4 wide receivers? Why not put Tyler Johnson in that situation? And I get it, I understand it. We talked about this last week, more so you. At this stage, we don't know what to expect from Tyler Johnson. However, there's a lot of guys in Tampa that, from the players, the coaching staff, even some of the fans, even reporters, they had an opportunity to read my work and say, you know what? Tyler Johnson is a good player. By the way, I also had an opportunity to talk to Davis Mills and Brandon Cooks about how Tyler Johnson is doing in practice. Both guys say they're loving what they're seeing out of Johnson, and they cannot wait for him to get out there on the field. So hopefully, come week 4, we could see Tyler Johnson, but I just think it's a little bit unfortunate that we haven't through the first 3 games, especially when you sign OJ Howard the week before the regular season started, and he automatically got into the lineup and was able to contribute to this organization like I believe Tyler Johnson can actually do.
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, run those numbers up, like, comment, share, Tell your grandmother to go to church and put us on the prayer list so we can pray together as a family to get more subscribers and follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans on Twitter as well.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.